I love Dark Souls. Practically everything made by From Software is an absolutely fantastic masterpiece in my eyes. Yes, Dark Souls 2 included, shut up. And whenever given the chance, I like to revisit them or try to explore outside the walls of FromSoft and play other games that were highly inspired by Dark Souls, like Neo, Lies of P, Hellpoint, Tales of Iron, and many others. However, there is one Souls-like that has come out recently that has my emotions all sort of confused, like a man when he's making a sandwich. And that game is Lords of the Fallen, and I can't get up. A reboot, kinda, of the original Lords of the Fallen, developed by CI Games, although this time it was developed by a subgroup of CI Games called Hexworks. It takes place in the dark fantasy world of Mornstead, where you, as the Lamp Bearer, are tasked with fixing the beacons that have shackled the evil demon lord Adir, all the while making your way through tough enemies, bosses, and a world that looks like where Pinhead goes to when he wants to go to a Renaissance fair and needs a break from BDSMing his victims. It's very much a Souls-like in every sense of the word. You have big and epic boss fights, a dark world where everything is morally ambiguous, you lose your souls, vigor, if you don't get back to them before dying. You have a large assortment of weapons and armor, you're dodging attacks, have a stamina meter, vestiges, which are basically bonfires, and an overall very challenging experience. Now, this sounds like it should be an overall really good time. But just like a parent is with their child, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed that you drink Coke through your ass. I have never been more conflicted with a video game more than I have been with Lords of the Fallen, as I do genuinely like this game, but because with everything that this game does right and takes from games that have come before it, such as the Souls games, it goes backwards and jumps off a cliff faster than a woke person jumps to conclusions. Before I get into the problems I have with Lords of the Fallen, I want to talk about the positives. This game actually includes a lot of small quality of life improvements and small tidbits that I think are actually pretty cool when it comes to the Souls-like genre, such as your ammunition replenishes when you rest or die, just like your healing items. You have the option to tinct your armor and make outfits match, and honestly I think that's a really cool option, especially because, well, there's a lot of really cool color options for your outfits in this game. Other than the vestiges, you also have the option to plant vestige seeds at certain locations, just in case it's been a long while since you've rested and you don't want to go all the way back in case you die. There's also a lot of cool magic spells, armor, weapons, projectiles, and the most important new mechanic, your umbral lamp, which can be used as a means to attack enemies where you can damage their soul as you suck it out. And it's also a little bit useful if they're at a higher altitude. You can basically pull their soul away and then they slowly start to fall to the ground or fall off a cliff, which actually I kind of like. That's pretty cool. The lamp is also used where when you either die or activate it, you go to the umbral world, which is basically the land of the dead. This is actually a very cool mechanic for a multitude of reasons. One, it gives you a second chance of keeping your vigor and to keep the fight going. Obviously, if you die a second time, you would lose your vigor unless you find one of those totems that bring you back to the world of the living. So this gives you several opportunities to really keep the game going and get out of some difficult scenarios. The other thing you can do while in the land of the dead is you can find secret paths to find cool items or more upgrades for the lamp or for your healing item. Now, sometimes it is required to go to the land of the dead to progress through the game, but that doesn't happen too often where it's annoying. But I will say it does borderline a bit for my comfort, where you do have to go to the Umbral Realm to move forward in the game, as I do think it should be more of an optional thing rather than something you have to rely on or have to move the game forward, in my personal opinion. Something else I also want to talk about is the story. Overall, I find it pretty interesting and engaging, as you try to uncover what happens to this world and how it went insane, how the Hallowed Sentinels went crazy, what exactly happened to the king and his rule, and all the little tidbits and story details of other characters as they build up this world and the tragedy that has befallen it. And the more you dig into the story, you start to wonder if there truly is a good side, or if these are just deities who are trying to take advantage of humanity in some way or another. Which is very Dark Souls, to be honest. One other very cool element in my opinion is every time you beat the game, you can unlock an extra class. And there are 4 you can unlock, which to me gives a bit of an incentive to not only beat the game, but also play it again with the new class you unlocked. And when you do finish the game, unlike in other Souls games, you can play what is called New Game Plus 0, which instead of the difficulty going up every time you play, it will just start again with the same level of difficulty as your first playthrough, which I personally found very useful, not because I don't like a challenge, but for the completionist side of me who likes to collect and complete everything. I really liked the option of just being able to go back to the beginning of the game where the difficulty is same level, but I am overly much more powerful, just so I can play the game again at my own leisure. Now, overall, this sounds cool, right? All the pieces sound like they fit, and overall, it sounds like we have a decent Souls-like. Well, it is for a little bit. Starting with the biggest addition to the game, which is the World of the Dead, or the Umbral Realm, it is honestly some of the most frustrating mechanics that we are introduced to in this game because of the difficulty that it places on players. When you go to the Land of the Dead, depending on where you are, not only do you still have to deal with the enemies that you normally have to fight, but you also are bombarded by moth women, gangly faceless pricks, hooded douchebags that throw up mystery-flavored Mountain Dew on you, and worst of all, these Reapers, which not only appear as normal enemies in the Land of the Dead, but if you stay too long, there is a bloody timer, where red versions of these Reapers show up and pursue you until you can get back to the land of the living, and you can't use your normal heals while they are out. Also, unlike in normal Souls games, or a Souls-like, where you kill an enemy, it doesn't come back unless you rest, these freaking deadite jackasses respawn constantly. I want you to understand, I have played and beaten each of the Dark Souls games, Elden Ring, and Demon Souls. I am familiar and okay with more difficult video games when they are fair. This is a certain level of bullshit that makes me pull my hair out, boil it, and feed it to my children with spaghetti sauce. Okay, that's just how the game is difficult and in my opinion unfair at times, but it is something that eventually I was able to overcome, as frustrating as it was. But then the game is plagued with a lot of incredibly odd design choices, such as bosses that are repeated as normal enemies multiple different times, not only negating the cool factor of the boss you just fought, but also adding an extra annoyance when adding them to normal areas. And yes, I'm aware that Elden Ring sort of did the same thing, but they were nowhere near as numerous as these guys. And on top of that, they are literally reskins. Yes, they might have a different effect or power, but overall, it's the same exact enemy with the same damn moveset. On top of that, there's barely any diversity in enemy types. You have all the Umbral enemies, and then you have Templar dudes, bigger Templar dudes, soldier with mace, soldier with crossbow, and yeah, you have some unique looking enemies, but they are copy and pasted everywhere across the world, where it doesn't feel unique to come across them or fight them. Also, you know how when you kill an enemy in literally any game, including Souls games, the XP is automatically given to you? Not in Lords of the Tripping! Whenever you kill an enemy, you have to walk over to them to pick up your vigor. And if an enemy falls off a cliff or glitches into the environment, which happens a lot, most of the time, it's just stuck. But the devs knew this because they purposefully added that you can grab them with the lamp if you are too out of reach, which, I'll just say it, why the hell didn't you just have it automatically picked up when they die? It makes no sense! Also, there's no bloody parry button. Okay, I kind of lied, there is a parry, but it sucks. Also, no backstabbing! You have to walk over to someone's backside, stagger them with a heavy attack, and then you can backstab them. And that's if they get staggered. I know this is nitpicking, but as I said earlier, it's like the developers wanted to add things in just for the sake of being a little bit different, but instead of actually being different, you just get put in special ed classes.
But your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Earlier, I did praise the world building and the story a bit, but to me, there are still some problems that left me desiring more and not feeling fulfilled. For the most part, the characters, the motivations, and how they fit into the overall story and world were pretty good. I didn't really have too many problems with the characters overall. But there was one character who I believe that they built up to a ridiculous degree and didn't really do anything with him, which is the Light Reaper. In the trailers, intro, and the opening of the game, they build him up to be your nemesis, this major threat and someone who's going to stalk you until he gets the lamp from you. And they do kind of do that with the fact that if you lose to him at the beginning of the game, he'll come back again in another boss arena. And if you lose to him in that boss arena, he'll just come back again at another one and another one until the end of the game where you finally have to actually defeat him. But isn't it kind of weird that every time he kills you, he doesn't bother to take the lamp at all? I mean, at the beginning, it kind of makes sense. He's interrupted after killing you. But, I mean, I'm guessing there's some lore reason behind it, but that is never clarified as far as I'm aware. And if you do somehow kill him at the beginning of the game, it becomes kind of a joke, especially since you come across all these umbrals of him killing other knights and lamp bearers, and then this nobody basically just kills him off. On top of that, I had a lot of problems with the endings. So, spoiler alert if you don't want to hear about the endings, skip to this time frame on the screen. Bringing up Dark Souls again, although neither ending is necessarily good, you still feel like you are a part of a bigger purpose, and that you had a major impact on the world. Bringing in the Age of Darkness and becoming the Dark Lord, or accepting your fate as the one to light the fire again and sacrificing yourself to keep things good in the world, even though someone else is just going to have to deal with the same thing you just went through to light the fire again and again, just to keep some level of a false peace. With Lords of the Fallen, the whole point of the story is that Adir the Demon Lord is coming back, and you are supposed to cleanse these beacons in order to keep him imprisoned. But there are three paths to take. One is the Radiant ending, which has you defeating Adir and then just bloody evaporating because Oreo, I know it's Aureus, but I don't care. Basically, Oreo doesn't give a f about his servants and is like, well, you killed him, time for me to kill you now, and you just evaporate into nothingness. There is the Umbral ending, which brings about a completely new age of chaos and insanity, with the realm of the dead basically taking over and you getting sucked up into a giant eyeball with teeth. Which, although accurate for something that was clearly inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, it still comes off as an ending that doesn't leave you satisfied or that you accomplished anything. The only satisfying ending is the Inferno ending, when you side with a deer and you wind up freeing him, because not only are you valued and thanked for his release, you are also made second in command. Like, I know evil endings are supposed to be cool. My favorite evil ending will always be from Knights of the Old Republic, but the fact that the other two endings are not only not satisfactory, don't leave you with a sense of accomplishment, but in the end, absolutely nothing matters. It doesn't leave you with a sense of choice, in my opinion. I know some people will say, well, isn't that what Dark Souls does? No, it doesn't, because you do bring some amount of peace for a little bit by lighting the fires, or you become the Dark Lord and bring about an age of darkness and humanity. With these endings, you and the world just get over, other than if you side with a deer, because then at least you get to be involved with corporate. On top of that, there are 12 different weapon types and a total of 217 weapons all together. That's honestly a lot of weapons to choose from, and I really like the designs of some of them, as there are some incredibly cool and unique looks for a lot of these weapons. But each weapon honestly doesn't feel that different or unique, other than in looks and some stat differences. Take Dark Souls 3, for example. There are about 190 weapons in the game, and although for the most part pretty similar, a lot of the weapons have their own unique attacks, buffs, and other things that make them stand out other than just looks. In Lords of the Fallen, each weapon might have different stats to them, but they don't feel different from each other. And the attack itself, my God. I don't mean to keep comparing, but look at the attack animation in Dark Souls 3 again. It's a simple, short move forward with each attack so you stay within decent range with your enemy. In Lords of the Fallen, whenever you do a simple attacks, it feels and looks like you're lunging forward to be first in line at the all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. Then there's the bugs. The bugs are bloody endless. Texture pop-ins, NPCs glitching into existence. As you are getting closer to some trees, blocks of it will come into existence as if someone was building one in Minecraft. The drop in frame rates to the point the game becomes a crawl. This weird shit where every time I completed something, I got this weird error. And then on top of that, one of the endings is completely broken and cannot be finished unless you are literally staring at the bloody floor. And just to let you know, I am playing this on the PlayStation 5, just to let you know which console, these problems are happening on. This game is such an unhinged mess. It is absolutely bloody ridiculous, in my opinion, how broken this game can be at times. So why the do I keep playing it? You can get a pumpkin head, and that immediately makes it a 10 out of 10 game. I don't make the rules. All joking aside, I did genuinely enjoy my time in Lords of the Fallen, despite the bullshit I have to endure to play it and the things that wind up taking me out of the experience. Because I do like the world a lot, and the story in some ways actually reminds me a little bit of Dark Souls 2, which is actually my favorite of the Dark Souls stories. The bosses, although not necessarily the best in the genre, and as I mentioned, several have the major issue of being copy and pasted common enemies. Outside of those, they can be incredibly fun and engaging and have some cool aspects to them in terms of how they are connected to the world, the emotion and the build up behind them as you're looking at the umbrals and you eventually face off against one of those bosses that the story is starting to tell you about. It's honestly a pretty cool experience in many regards. On top of that, the devs are clearly hard at work post-launch trying to optimize their game and even add in free content, which to me is something not found in a lot of game devs nowadays, and that is something I do commend them for. In order for a game to truly grab my attention, I have to be immersed in its world and either the main character or the character I created myself, and Lords of the Fallen, in my opinion, does truly do that, which is honestly why I've beaten this game several times already trying to get all the endings, the weapons and armor, the spells, and trying to complete the side side quests for the NPCs. I keep finding myself coming back to Mornstead despite the huge, sometimes literally game-breaking issues and technical issues I have with this game. I really hope that they do follow through and make a sequel similar to this game and its world and not reboot it again, or worse, go back to the original because that one really was not good. In comparison to the first game, this game is a major step forward, which is honestly one of the reasons why I'm on the side of the devs and really hope that they do succeed in either making this game a little bit better through their updates or are able to make a much better sequel with it. Because they clearly have something here, but in order for that game to be a success, the devs need to learn from their lessons of why people have a problem with this game. And on top of that, just keep the game a bit longer in the oven to take care of the bugs, glitches, and maybe some more testing out on the mechanics. So would I recommend buying this game? I honestly don't know. I am glad I bought the game, but even though Stockholm Syndrome is clearly having an effect on me here, I have so many problems with it that even though I do enjoy it, I don't think that's enough for me to tell people to buy the game, unless it's discounted. I enjoyed my time in the land of Mornstead, and even though I can't fully recommend it, I do see a potentially bright future shining this lantern in the darkness for a potential sequel, and I do hope to return to this land once again. I mean, after all, isn't that what the Souls games are all about? It's about getting good, learning from your mistakes, and improving yourself. It's about overcoming challenges and hardships, which I'm sure the game devs did have to deal with this game. There is a lot of room for improvement, but I am sure with a good skill check, the devs will be able to live up to the challenge to make improvements when the sequel, I really, truly hope, does come around.